Vanakkam. I'm Vayoni Dimel. This is Boston Lanka News, bringing you news, views and entertainment from Boston and USA. One-on-one conversation with the Sri Lankan ambassador to US, Mr. Jaliya Wickramsuriya. Sri Lanka presenting its case before the UN Human Rights Council in Geneva. Update on dual citizenship process from the Sri Lankan ambassador to US. US government funds a new project to empower people with disabilities in the eastern province in Sri Lanka. Since the ending of the 30-year-long war, Sri Lanka has been waging a different kind of a battle in the diplomatic front. Sri Lanka's ambassador in USA, Mr. Jaliya Wickramsuriya, has been in the forefront of that battle. Boston Lanka visited Washington, D.C. to meet the ambassador Wickramsuriya. Today we are with Sri Lankan ambassador to USA, His Excellency, Mr. Jaliya Wickramsuriya. Ambassador, Aibwan, we are very thankful to you for taking your time to do this interview.
Thank you.
Let me ask you the first question. Could you share some of your achievements that you feel proud of as the ambassador?
Actually, I'm proud to represent my country as one of the oldest democracies in Asia with over 2,500 years of written history. Sri Lanka is a beautiful and diverse nation. I'm honored to serve Sri Lanka during this critical time in our country, in our history, by eliminating terrorism and bringing back human rights for the people of Sri Lanka. The country has been able to redevelop and progress. As the ambassador of Sri Lanka during this post-conflict situation, I can share the correct story of my country, which is a positive and peaceful one. I inform our friends in the US that prosperity is returning to Sri Lanka. People are back at work and redevelopment is occurring rapidly. The economy is growing, investment is increasing, and most importantly, there is the renewal of hope in the future. I have worked to strengthen Sri Lanka's bilateral relationship with the US, reflecting political and economic realities. I have reinforced Sri Lanka's position as a long-standing friend and democratic partner of the United States.
What have been your biggest challenges as ambassador?
I think to spread the correct message of Sri Lanka as a peaceful and reconciled country which is governed by democracy, the observance of human rights and rule of law. There are the same fundamental values as the USA. The pro-LTT diaspora was very active for nearly 30 years over the Western world. When I began as the ambassador, it was a huge challenge to change the perception of many people by providing the correct story of Sri Lanka to the US government officials, members of Congress, non-profit organizations, and the American people. As a representative of the Sri Lankan government, my job is to protect and defend the people of Sri Lanka. This responsibility is often challenging but always extremely fulfilling.
Ambassador, we know that you've been working very hard on building networks with Sri Lankans living in USA, especially to counter some of the false propaganda against Sri Lanka. Could you give us an update on that?
Yes, that's a great question. It was a difficult one for us, but we organized various different programs. Number one we did recently was getting down Sri Lankan diaspora to Washington, and we organized a Sri Lanka Day in Congress. There were about 150 members came from all over the country, and they met with their congressional officers. So there are 425 members, so it's not easy to talk to each and every one of them. So this was that's why we organized community members to come and talk to their congressman in one day. That was very successful, and they went and met them and explained them and educated them about actual story of Sri Lanka. Also, I traveled to different states, meet with senators and members of the Congress, and introduce the Sri Lankan community members in the respective states to members of the Congress. Establishing Sri Lanka caucus in the House of Representatives. There are about 24 members in the Sri Lankan caucus now. Events at the embassy and official residence and other areas to promote Sri Lanka. Engaging with Sri Lankan Americans and getting to know them all over the country. Inviting everyone to visit Sri Lanka who had not been there. Sharing updates with the community in different ways, like webcast to the community. We use social media a lot, Facebook, Twitter, and also we have our own public relations campaign.
Tell us about the resolution 177, the Congressman Michael Grimm's sponsored.
Yes. Actually, the Congressman resolution 177 was created by Congressman Michael Grimm, as you mentioned correctly, Republican from New York, Staten Island. We know that some people who are against Sri Lanka have supported Congressman Grimm, and he has been trying to bring this resolution up in the House since April 2011. We were very active since then and trying to update the correct story of Sri Lanka, not only with the people who sponsored the resolution, and we went beyond that and spoke to so many congressmen, and we managed to keep it down until September. So when we found out that this resolution was on the congressional agenda in September, we immediately worked with our supportive friends in the Congress to get it pulled from the voting calendar. Actually, it was very successful. First time in the history we managed to pull it out from the congressional calendar. We need to should be thankful to the congressmen who visited Sri Lanka and who saw the actual story of Sri Lanka, and they fought for it together with the Sri Lankan community, and my staff worked very hard to pull it out from the calendar. The mission made representations with the House leadership of both Republicans and Democrats to explain the potential damage this resolution can have towards US-Sri Lanka bilateral relations. Many of our friends in Congress, as I mentioned to you before, have been to Sri Lanka and seen the true situation. So they are educating their colleagues with the correct story. The embassy is also meeting with congressional officers to express the damage this resolution will have towards US-Sri Lanka relations. It is important to note that this legislation is a resolution and not a bill. A resolution does not have the force of law.
We will bring you the response of the ambassador to our questions about the dual citizenship and the reports about the Sri Lankan government using an American public relation firm to do its lobbying later in the program. Sri Lanka will face some tough questioning at the United Nations human rights body this Thursday when the periodical review of its progress during the past 4 years on the human rights gets underway at the UN Human Rights Council in Geneva. Minister Mahinda Samarasinghe, Sri Lanka's Special Envoy for Human Rights, will share the progress country has made in all aspects of the promotion and protection of human rights. The UN scrutinizes the human rights record of each member state every 4 years and this review allows governments to examine Sri Lanka's human rights record and make recommendations for improvements. Sri Lanka's last review in 2008 occurred during the conflict between the government and the Liberation Tigers of Tamil Eelam, which ended in May 2009. A committee headed by India with Benin and Spain as the other members would review Sri Lanka's responses, and based on the responses will formulate the report of the review, and the Council will adopt the review following a vote. Human Rights Watch, releasing a statement, said the United Nations members should urge Sri Lanka to act on accountability for abuses at its Universal Periodic Review. According to the statement, Sri Lanka must also be reminded of its international obligations to protect free expression and to stop intimidation of civil society and the media. Government should use the review to question Sri Lanka's deteriorating human rights situation and make recommendations for meaningful change, said Brad Adams, Asia Director at Human Rights Watch. The Sri Lankan Ministry of External Affairs said Monday that Sri Lanka was ready to face the Universal Periodic Review process with confidence. We have prepared well to face the review, said Secretary to the Ministry Karunatilaka Amnugama. The application process for the dual citizenship for those Sri Lankans who are abroad has been temporarily halted by the Sri Lankan government a few years ago. There are many Sri Lankans living abroad are waiting for the government to open up the application process. Ambassador, could you please give us an update on dual citizenship?
We hope the new policy will be implemented early next year. That is the update that I have for the moment.
Nice. There has been many news reports about the efforts of the US Embassy in Sri Lanka as well as the government of Sri Lanka using the public relations firms such as Bell Pottinger and some other US-based firms to do lobbying for Sri Lanka. Some have criticized these efforts as the waste of Sri Lankan taxpayers' money. Some criticize the embassy for hiring a US public relations firm when you have the able officials in the embassy who could handle the PR work for Sri Lanka. What's your response?
I'm glad that you came out with that question. Actually, we handle all our own public relations matters. We do not have a PR firm.
One of the major challenges the Sri Lankan government is facing is to convince the many skeptic members of the Tamil diaspora that the Sri Lankan government is genuinely working on reconciliation efforts, and much progress has been made on reconstruction of the North and East. What efforts have you taken to engage with the members of the some Tamil diaspora who are still not convinced with the Sri Lankan government? The efforts that the government has taken towards addressing the grievances of the Tamil community in Sri Lanka?
Actually, it's a very important question, and this is where that I work. I put more than 50% of my time. I have been personally meeting with members of the Tamil diaspora, both in the Greater Washington area and on visit to other states too. I have also been encouraging and facilitating their visit to Sri Lanka to see for themselves and tremendous development that are taking place in Sri Lanka, particularly in the north and the east. I'm currently working with the State Department to organize a group to visit Sri Lanka in the new year to invest in projects in the northern and the eastern province. And also when I visit to different states, I make sure when I go to different states to meet Sri Lankan diaspora, I make sure to meet Tamil diaspora for sure, and I am giving more time for them, especially they need to be told and the correct story, and encourage them to visit Sri Lanka and for them to see themselves, to understand what is in Sri Lanka, because most of these Tamil diaspora members have not visited Sri Lanka for last 25 years.
will bring the rest of the interview with the Sri Lankan ambassador to USA in our next weekly edition. US Ambassador to Sri Lanka, Michelle Sison, opened the See the Differences Training and Production Center in Trincomalee last week. Eastern Province Chief Minister Najib Abdul Majid also attended the event. The center will empower people with disabilities, providing training and income generation opportunities. This initiative is a partnership between the United States Agency for International Development, USAID, and Arun Mughal Foundation and the Department of Social Services in the Eastern Province. Over the next 2 years, at least 100 people with disabilities will receive training at the See the Differences Center, learning how to produce handicrafts and souvenirs. Through this partnership, over 100 disabled individuals will receive training and livelihood opportunities. Most importantly, this initiative will help create awareness and appreciation of their capacities and abilities while connecting them with mainstream society, said Ambassador Sison at the opening ceremony. I thank the American people for supporting the development of the Eastern Province, said Mr. Majid, the Chief Minister of the Eastern Province. That concludes our news edition. We will meet you again with another news edition of News, Views and Entertainment from Boston and USA. Till then, goodbye.